Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you. We're all in our places with sunshiny faces, or not. Welcome to another dispiriting Monday. Guys. So I just got back to Pittsburgh late last night, and I'm a little worse for wear for having endured the joys of travel, but also enjoyed the pleasure of family and friends. I feel like I'm living in some kind of strange. Things feel out of joint. The world seems to be pretty much as I know it and knew it, as I navigate it, as I traveled, as I saw others, lots of others, strangers in airports and people traveling, and everything seemingly functioning as I recall it. And yet, every time sort of the normal activities of life, the getting from here to there, the cooking, the cleaning, the stuff, dealing with family and very basic things. Anytime that stopped, it was just astonishing to me how often the conversation turned to fear. Fear of where we were going, where things were heading, despite the fact that, as I said, this is why it seems so out of joint. Like I'm living in two parallel universes, one in which I continue to operate like I always have, and things seemingly are like they always were. And then the other, when you stop and you're sitting and you're maybe conversing, talking to somebody else, and either you or the other invariably brings it up. This nightmare that's unfolding. And this sense that whatever it is we're doing to try to stop it is not happening quickly enough, and that there is a momentum building that is terrifying. So I it's so odd to be living normal. And understand this, and this is what happens when you realize that you or I are living our normal lives. A whole lot of others, and that others is growing in number, are not. They are not living their normal lives. They are living truly in fear. And the possibility of all of us truly living in fear, more and more of us living in fear, is very real. And For people who don't want to hear it, I will tell them that if they don't want to hear it, that will only make it more conceivable that they and people they care about will be living in true fear sooner rather than later. You can't not pay attention and act whenever you can. There's so many things that I've read, and one of which is written by a general, General McChrystal. Perhaps you saw it as well. He's not given to writing op-eds. He has been a military man, again, not given by virtue of being a military man to inserting himself in the political realm. But Stanley McChrystal is also an American citizen. He's now retired from the Army, and he clearly is living in fear. And that's what he wrote about. I want to share some of it with you. He said, "Fear defines us, not by its presence, but how we respond to it." The first kind of fear is primal. I mean, it grips you when lightning strikes too close, or when a crack of a bullet signals imminent danger. That's not the fear that he's talking about. He's talking about the more, what he calls, insidious kind of fear, the fear I am feeling, the fear that so many in America are fearing. And that is the fear that seeps into our daily lives. It lingers in the background. It dictates our choices without us even realizing it's doing that. And he says today's fear is different than it has been, because the fear so many of us are feeling in America today has been cultivated. And he makes very clear, without naming names, who he's talking about. He talks about the importance of leaders in a time of fear. But then he notes one of the major reasons, of course, that we are all feeling this insidious fear is that our leaders have become the very architects of this fear, stoking it, stoking division. And by simply writing this opinion piece as he did, he is showing that he is willing to act publicly despite his fear, because he knows our leaders now, and he knows what small, vindictive men they are, and that they will target him. He says this: they do not lead, these leaders. They inflame. They do not steady the ship. They rock it for effect. And in doing so, they set a precedent that character no longer matters, that outrage is a currency, and that the path to power is not through integrity, but through spectacle. General McChrystal nailing it, nailing Trump and the neo-fascists who have taken power in our country. And he says when our leaders abandon character, it accelerates decay. It tells people that principles are optional, that decency is weakness, that rules are for fools. It fosters a culture of fear, where hesitation replaces confidence, cynicism replaces trust, and self-preservation replaces the courage to stand up for what is right. When those at the top abandon the standards that hold society together, the rest of us, knowingly or not, follow suit. And when enough people do, the foundation doesn't just erode, it crumbles. So General McChrystal is one of the generals now that are speaking out clearly. And that gives me a measure of hope, but I need to see more and more of the generals speaking out. And he goes on to say, the strength of our character is not defined by the absence of fear, but by the ability to face it, to rise above it, and to live and lead with integrity. Fear is not a force to be defeated by force alone, but by the steady adherence to rules that govern our actions and our hearts. In this, we will find not just a defense against fear, but also the foundation of our strength. Stanley McChrystal, a military man, showing us what a leader is and telling us that the leaders we have now are corrupted and are creating all of the elements that will lead to the downfall of everything we have cherished. So imagine that people's reaction to this fraught, consequential moment can be, I can't handle it. I can't listen. I don't want to look. I can't deal with it. Fine. Then go off and be part of the problem. This is the moment when you decide whether or not you're going to be, well, part of the sheep, the ostriches, the people that put their heads down, protect themselves, or you're going to be one of those who, although still fearful, acts. You know, we are not, I suspect, going to be served well or saved by the Supreme Court. I must say, the events of the last maybe 24, 36 hours, I think make pretty clear that the court is not going to summon the strength, the character, the integrity to preserve this country. looking more closely at its unanimous decision the other day, right? Which, if you read the headline or didn't bother looking more closely, while saying that what the Trump administration had done in plucking this one human being, never mind all the thousands of others they've plucked, but this one whose case got to their attention, that it was not constitutional what they had done. And they said that the government, the executive branch, must facilitate the return of this man whose freedom had been taken from him and whose life is truly in danger. The words that the court uses are parsed, every word chosen with such care. The word facilitate was chosen by the Roberts Court with great care. It is why, I imagine, they were able to get even Alito and Thomas to sign off so that they could say it was a unanimous ruling of the court, making it thus appear that the court was going to stand up to this lawless executive. But now we see how their order is going to be ignored, which we were told would create a true constitutional crisis. The order is, make no mistake, going to not be followed. And in fact, there's a headline I saw in the paper that said the Justice Department, the executive branch, says they do not have to and will not. In fact, I'm looking for the exact words. You'll excuse me, I hope, a second. Yeah, Justice Department, here's the quote. Justice Department says it is not required to bring back wrongly deported man. Strange, isn't it? Because you thought that the Supreme Court said that the government had unconstitutionally removed him and needed to facilitate his return. The lower court had not, I believe, used the word facilitate. The lower court had used the word effectuate his return. And the Roberts Court wouldn't go that far. They took issue with the word effectuate. Now, you and I, thinking of those two words, might say, well, they're synonyms, aren't they? You're supposed to effectuate this so that it happens. You're supposed to facilitate it so it happens. But effectuate really means do it. Facilitate doesn't mean do it, does it? Think about it. It means try to do it, help to do it. And in fact, the Supreme Court, this Roberts Court, told the lower court judge that they were a little uncomfortable with the term effectuate because it seemed to be maybe trampling upon the executive's right to be an executive. And so, of course, the lawyers for our lawless executive branch understood the gift that the Roberts Court had given them and quickly said, the courts have no authority to direct the executive branch to conduct foreign relations in a certain way or engage with a foreign sovereign in a given manner, which they would have to do to facilitate and or effectuate the removal of this guy from the El Salvadoran prison they'd sent him to. Using this term, the Trump administration has said that facilitate only means allowing an alien to enter the United States by taking all available steps to remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede that alien's ability to return. It does not mean removing him from the custody of another country. Interesting, is it not? Since, of course, the court's implication, the Supreme Court's implication was that if they were to facilitate his return to the United States, it definitely would mean dealing with this foreign country. So, yeah, our Supreme Court, this Roberts Court, said to the district court, please clarify what you meant by effectuate, because you must, and this again, the Roberts Court said, you must give due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. There's the gift to Trump. He can argue that this is all has now to do with foreign affairs. And here he's got the Supreme Court saying that the lower court perhaps did not show the deference to the executive that was required. God Almighty. And so the president of El Salvador happens to be right here. I guess he's going to the White House today. These two crooks are going to be together, these two tyrants together. And make no mistake, one is more powerful than the other. And whatever happens here, whatever these two tyrants decide would serve their interest, especially the big guy's interest, that'd be our tyrant, is going to happen. My suspicion is that Trump will not bring this guy back. And I don't know what they'll cook up, if they'll let the El Salvadoran president sort of take the heat. Who the hell knows? But we're about to see. Again, we're getting schooled in how autocrats work. And the fact that This is the first thumbing of the nose by this executive branch. 2, a unanimous, definitely, yeah, unanimous, but with a few little holes in it order. But they're thumbing their nose at it, taking advantage of the little holes. And so, to our unschooled minds, it appeared that the court had ordered Trump to get this guy back. The guy that they admitted should not have been sent there. And I doubt very seriously if that's what's going to happen. And understand that if Trump thumbs his nose in this way at this court, and that this is the best this court could do in this clearly unconstitutional action and infringement on the basic rights we've all understood about due process in our so-called democracy, that we're helpless. Ain't nobody going to save us but ourselves. I came upon somewhere a quote by one of the founding fathers, James Madison, just again to clarify and to show that nothing. James Madison lived in a different time. He didn't know from the kind of world. If you drop James Madison right down beside you right now, he'd probably pass out just from trying to take in the reality, the environment that we live in, from your, I don't know, from your cell phone to your television to your car to whatever. He lived in a totally different time, and yet humans were the same. So they knew humans then, and the humans now are no different. Our accoutrements might be very different, but our insides ain't, and our nature is not. And so, what James Madison, although he wouldn't know how to operate a microwave, is still a wise man, and his words still hold weight, even in our times. And he said this: the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judicial, in the same hands, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. And what we are seeing is the very definition of tyranny. The Congress is in the hands of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is solely in the hands, have surrendered themselves to the executive. So the legislative branch, poof. The executive holds the legislative branch. And the judiciary, well, the top of the judicial pyramid is the Supreme Court. And if the executive can ignore orders of the Supreme Court, then we have a tyranny. It is why they said if Trump did not obey this order, we would have a constitutional crisis. But I point out the parsing of words here to show how John Roberts is a smart coward. Very smart coward. And the only way he could play this. The only way he could get a unanimous decision was to give the tyrant an out. And he gave it to him with the word facilitate. And with telling the lower court that, well, not quite sure you're showing the proper deference to the executive branch. And there you have it. Yep. There you have it. I think I saw this in, let me see here. Heather Cox Richardson, not sure. I'm getting stuff right. Here. Let me see. Yeah, this is really chilling if this is true. And I have no reason to believe it isn't, because these are really good journalists, as long as they're able to continue to do their jobs. And if they start rounding up these journalists, God help us. Politico reported that the former Blackwater CEO, remember this evil character, Eric Prince? He was the brother of Trump's education secretary in his first administration. Eric Prince was the guy who sent mercenaries all over the place and had a really cozy relationship with the Defense Department during Trump's first administration. According to Politico, Eric Prince has an idea, and he's been pitching it to the White House. And that is to ramp up these grabbings of people and sending them off to El Salvador, to this hellhole prison in El Salvador. And he's telling the White House, we can get the number. I mean, you're doing piddling numbers here. You can get the number up to 100,000. 100,000. And the way you do it is by building an expansion onto the prison. First of all, you make somehow, they figure, believe me, look, make it somehow part of American territory, and the little tyrant in El Salvador will do this for the bigger tyrant. Make it somehow part of American jurisdiction, and build the expansion, and then lease it back to El Salvador to run it. And all of this is how, again, they're going to somehow use. They have lawyers who, see every little potential loophole, and then all they need is this quiescent, cowardly Roberts court with a majority of Republicans on it to change little words here and there. You got to get rid of that effectuate and let's put in facilitate, okay? That's all you need to do. Looks good. It still looks good. So there's a fascinating piece that I came across, and again, we should all be going to law school now because so much of what they're going to be doing, and if you want to follow this, is going to see how they use and abuse, misuse the law. And you'll see how the law is a slippery eel of a thing, even when sometimes it appears to be so clear. Like, think of some of the amendments. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of, right? I mean, you think of that, well, that's as concrete as you could possibly get. Give the lawyers a little time. They'll figure it out. So, a lawyer wrote a fascinating piece about the fact that so many of these cases now that are trying to stop and are challenging these unconstitutional actions of the Trump administration are being brought by lawyers who've come generally from the left, from the from the ACLU types, from the civil libertarian folks. And this guy says they're forgetting something because it's not how they generally would bring a case. They're forgetting the way that a libertarian, a more right-wing challenge to what Trump is doing would see an opening. And it's fascinating. The guy who wrote this is named Aziz Hook. He's a professor of law at the University of Chicago. And here's what he tells us that is being ignored and he thinks is a way to stop some of this stuff, including the rendition of like this guy. A central premise, he says, of many of the unprecedented things that Donald Trump has done was captured by something he said a few days after his inauguration. And I don't remember him saying this, but he must have said it. It sure sounds like a moment of truth. He says, I have certain hatreds of people. And this law professor says, however many lies he's been accused of uttering, can there be any doubt that this statement, I have certain hatreds of people, was unalloyed truth? And this truth, his hatred, his self-professed hatred of people, has in it a powerful, so far neglected legal argument for taking him on. And he said, and it is an argument that could unite the left and the right. So listen to this. It's brilliant. A single plainly unconstitutional thread ties together many of Trump's actions so far. It's so obvious and so apparent that ill will, right? Revenge, meanness, hatred, cruelty. I'm putting some words in here, believe me. Is the motive, is the reason why he's targeting certain people, certain institutions. This is something he says that by law he is not allowed to do. He says some of the actions he has taken in terms of these hatreds he has admitted. Taking away the security details for some of his former aides, rescinding security clearances of his perceived enemies, blacklisting entire law firms with Democratic connections, denying the residents of Maine the ability to register their children with social security numbers. Did you miss that one? Because he's ticked that the governor of Maine was not respectful to him. And this is where he tells us what the law is. Most of us, and it's true, are familiar with the constitutional prohibitions regarding speech or discriminating on the basis of race, but a whole bunch of us don't know or have forgotten that it is a fact that it is unconstitutional to act against a person or an institution out of simple malice. It's in the Constitution. Just because you hate them, just because you want to take vengeance upon them, just because they looked at you cross-eyed or said you instigated the January 6th insurrection, any of that stuff, just because is not a constitutional basis for a whole bunch of the actions that he has taken. Under our Constitution, the government must be motivated by the law, not caprice or hatred. It's in there. And then I won't get into it with you. He talks about a specific case that has been Supreme Court, and that it's a precedent because it has been adjudicated and found to be yes. And it's always conservatives on the court that go for this argument against malice. I won't go into the case. But this guy has come up with something that the more left-leaning lawyers thus far have not. That you can't just do this kind of actions because you're pissed. That is not a legal or constitutional way for an executive to act. And he says, and this strikes me as such a strategic error. Most Americans, I'll just read his last comment. Most Americans agree that the awesome power of the state should not be used for fickle reasons, driving out arbitrary whim and its cousin, hate, from the government's lexicon is surely a goal that all, of whatever political hue, can agree upon. The absence of this argument from the litigation we have seen so far means we don't even have a full airing of the arguments and facts about abuses of power that are running rampant now by this administration in plain sight. So, just saying, this guy has come up with something. Oh, God, I don't know. It's something that, again, this Roberts court has agreed with in relatively recent cases. I mean, often having to do with things like can a town in Illinois make a homeowner uh, have a larger easement to the street or something? I'm not kidding. That's sort of one of the cases. And it was done to this homeowner because the homeowner is a pain in the neck and is suing the local government all the time. And the local government hit back and couldn't show that it was hitting back for any other reason than just because it could. And to, yeah, use its power to annoy the homeowner as much as the homeowner was annoying it. It was exactly the kind of governmental action that this Trump administration takes on such a grand scale. So I don't know. And then one of you sent me a wonderful piece from one of the op-ed people at the Philadelphia Inquirer, Will Bunch, who was saying, my niece's husband was saying the same thing at our Passover weekend. He was saying, and I was saying, you'll not ever see it. But Will Bunch was, what they're saying is they want these people, all of them, most of Trump's cabinet, Kristi Noem, Vance, name them, one creep and fool and traitor after another. They want them to face justice at some point. Now, justice is very elusive these days. It's all we've been talking about. But at some point, we want the perpetrators of this hellscape that used to be our country. We want these perps to end up in front of a court, like the Nuremberg trials. Yeah. And I assure you, any lawyer, any prosecutor coming after them for violations of our Constitution would be on such firm ground and easy skating, as opposed to the tortured ways that Pam Bondi's Justice Department lawyers are attempting to use our Constitution to go after people who have done nothing wrong, nothing except say the wrong thing, write the wrong thing. It would be so easy to take these people down if we can ever get them into a courtroom. And that could be a long time coming. I want to I know I'm reading a lot to you, but it's said so much better than I could do by just fulminating. He says the guys who are working for ICE, I mean, he's going down into the guys who are plucking people off the streets and out of their homes and kids out of schools. He says, I want to know who these people are because they are wantonly committing human rights violations in my name and yours. They're acting as agents of the American government. And what is the American government? Supposedly, we, the people. And he says this, because I want their names. Because when all of this is over, and I swear one day it will be, at the ballot box or in the streets or by any means necessary, even though I might not live to see it, I want more than just people feeling ashamed of their role in this spree of inhumanity. I want justice. Because something has gone deeply wrong, deeply haywire, in a nation that used to claim that our cherished ideas around equal justice for all, free speech, welcoming the world's refugees, made us an exceptional land. The reality, of course, is that 250 years of our actual commitment to these values was wildly imperfect and uneven, but it also feels that Trump's second coming unleashed new depths of ugliness we falsely believed could never happen here. Yeah. And then here's where his hope comes in. One trait shared by most fascist regimes is they ultimately implode, often with major collateral damage, yeah, but raising the question of consequences for those who perpetrated their crimes against humanity. So the sword of justice should someday come for the likes of Kristi Noem or immigration czar Tom Homan. Well, the list is long, long, long. But he says, but also for the everyday Americans who not only willingly are taking part in this evil, but who, in the case of many ICE agents, border agents, seem so enthusiastic about the cruelty. After the revolution, or whatever it takes to wake up from this nightmare, will all these human cogs in our gulag machine fall back on the canard that they were just following orders? Or can a nation long drunk on the delusion of its own exceptionalism understand that all of us are making deeply moral choices right now, either to comply with this inhumanity or to resist it? We'll see. There's a. I haven't mentioned the arson at Governor Shapiro's home yesterday, because I, you know, what can you say? Trump has unleashed such evil, such violence, criminality, and hate. And it is just the beginning. I mean, looking at the calendar, it's just the beginning. So I don't know what to say. I'm so thankful that he and his family and the guests he had in his home that night were not hurt. But make no mistake, I mean, the children that were there were hurt. They were terrorized. They were traumatized. The adults too, but I'm hoping they have the more capacity to deal with it. And this stuff will continue apace. You know what? Let me end with something that I found so delightful when I was on the plane yesterday. Um, I There was a piece in the Atlantic about Abraham Lincoln's beard, and maybe some of you have read it. I don't know, but this is a story that, again, I had heard of, but not quite all of it. And when Lincoln started to run for president, he was a real unknown. And, pictures of him would appear in the papers, and people were reacting to him by saying, God, that guy is ugly. He was not a handsome man. And even a little 11-year-old girl happened to see his picture. Uh, Her name was Grace Bedell, and she lived in the town of Westfield, New York. And and I guess she knew from her parents' conversation that he was a good man, but she was a little worried about him because of the way he looked. So she actually, this 11-year-old girl, seeing his picture, wrote Abe Lincoln a letter. And she told him that she thought that maybe he should grow a beard. That was her suggestion, and her words were, "If you let your whiskers grow, you would look a great deal better, for your face is so thin." And Abe Lincoln, being the wondrous being he was, replied to her, of course, and said he worried that a beard might make him look silly, but he began growing one. And it wasn't fully grown as he boarded the train to take him to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration. But during this whistle stop tour to D.C., the slightly bearded Abe Lincoln actually stopped to greet the little girl in Western New York and to show her his attempt at growing a beard and to give her a hug. The other thing about the article that was fascinating is that photography was still relatively new. And you see with Lincoln's election, the first times that political operatives are seeing how important it is for candidates to be attractive or at least not ugly. And so the photographic age, the beginning of photography, also coincides, unfortunately, with politics starting to be concerned with appearances. I found that an interesting historical tidbit. Okay, that's it for me. I'm sorry. Well, I'm going to stop saying I'm sorry. I, I, no time to be silent. No time to be silent. Uh, talk at you all again tomorrow. Susan in tow. Okay.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.